The Endicott College Writing Center presents Demystifying the Literature Review, a workshop presented by the Endicott College Writing Center.
Get started now. All right, so tonight, the first thing I would like us to do to introduce our topic of understanding what exactly literature review is and what it can do for you, we're going to be doing a little bit of work with actual real-life thesis projects. So the Writing Center has an archive of over 50 different projects from all different majors across campus. And we have these because it's supposed to be a helpful tool for you folks so that you can actually see what these look like, you can understand what you're kind of aiming for your finished product there, okay? So it looks like we have enough people to do 6 groups. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups, just going by the tables. What I'm going to do now is pass out an example to each group. You guys are going to pick a spokesperson. That spokesperson is going to read you the first 3 paragraphs of the literature review section, okay? So while that person is reading to you, I want you to be thinking about and taking notes on these questions, because we're going to discuss them as a large group after everyone has had a chance to kind of think about them and examine, okay?
So let's see what our group came up with in their discussion. We did identify a number of differences and similarities from the literature review as compared to a traditional research paper. So for example, if we start with our differences, in a literature review, you're being asked to take a broad area of information and a very large quantity of resources, usually between 15 and 25 scholarly peer-reviewed sources, and you're asked to incorporate all of these things in your literature review. Another difference is that there are so many sources that you have to pull them all together. And this is a concept that we talk about in the terms of synthesizing. This is something that we'll discuss in greater detail in a couple of minutes. It was also noted that the actual layout of the thesis project is different. It has headings, it has a table of contents, which is something not typically seen in a regular research paper. In addition, our literature review is going to include discussion of what the key words were used in the searches to obtain our evidence, and also sometimes there's an inclusion of the list of databases from which the scholarly peer-reviewed sources were gathered. And in our lit review, we're being asked to figure out the why behind the research question as well. We're thinking about the causal factors that have resulted in the current situation being studied. And this is different from the things that we've been asked to do in our traditional research paper, but there are some commonalities. For example, just like in a research paper, you're being asked to group information together in a category or a topic. You're being asked to think organizationally. Citation style, you still use the traditional MLA or APA or Chicago, depending on your academic discipline for the project. Everything should still be written in academic voice with proper formal tone and word choice. And of course, our main goal here is to define the problem and the main focus of the project, just like in any other research-based project.
The thing I want to start out by saying is that while most of the professors on this campus have a pretty consistent style in terms of what they would like for the lit review and how it's going to be organized, every professor has, their full ability to ask for whichever alterations they prefer. They are the experts in these fields, they've been working in these fields, and so however they feel is best for you to present this information is definitely what we're going to be going by. So just always make sure you speak to your professor as the complete person of authority on these topics, okay? So the things that we need to make sure we know about a lit review is that it synthesizes stuff, right? Have we sick of that word yet? It synthesizes the results of all of your readings, okay? And to write the lit review, it's going to demonstrate that you have an expansive knowledge of the topic. So you guys are, when you get to the senior thesis and you get to the lit review, you've been studying within your discipline for 3 going on 4 years. So at this point, we need you to prove to us, this is why it's a capstone project, right? We need you to prove to us that you know enough about the conventions of your discipline to be able to say something informative and add to the dialogue going on in your field. So this is your chance to enter that conversation that up until now you have been analyzing, you have been learning about, but you haven't actually contributed to yet. So the first step in making a good contribution to these ongoing dialogues is for you to be able to show us that you have a comprehensive understanding, an unbiased understanding of all of the steps that went into this topic before your project came about. So you're giving us the context and the history. The word that comes up all the time is this thing about synthesis, right? And there's a big difference between summarizing something and synthesizing something. When you're summarizing, you're just giving me the distilled information. So you're taking a large quantity of information and you're reducing it to about a third of the original length, okay? And you're trying to represent as accurately as possible what that information was saying. But when we synthesize things, it's more about figuring out the relationship between the information. So figuring out, maybe your topic has two distinct camps, two distinct areas of thought. So it's figuring out, okay, these researchers are all in agreement, and then these research over here are all in agreement, and showing the reader how these concepts work together and build off of each other, okay? So a summary, which is the recap of the important information, that's not really what we're trying to do anymore. A synthesis is a reorganization or reshuffling of that information. And when you can tell when you've done really great synthesizing when you have at least 2 or 3 different articles cited in every paragraph. Okay? So kind of pulling some more information from the list we started generating together here. These are the major differences, and it's kind of easier to think about them when you can see them side by side. In a research paper, we're trying to support a very specific position. In a lit review, you're not trying to do that yet. While you do have a hypothesis in a research question, you're not proving a thesis statement in the traditional sense. So you're not going to be asked to have topic sentences that continually relate back to that thesis statement. You're not doing that. You're just giving us the comprehensive picture of the issue itself, okay? So as we're in a research paper, you keep supporting and bringing up your thesis over and over again and saying, look, this is proof my thesis is true. This is proof my thesis is true. We're not doing that over here. We're not aimed towards any kind of solution, okay? We're aimed towards telling the truth and describing all sides of the issue at hand. As we're a research paper, or especially a reflection paper, anything that has your own personal opinion in there, can include a lot of anecdotes and things like that. The lit review is going to contain only source information. So even if it's conclusions that you yourself are drawing from the research, that doesn't go in there yet. That's going to go in the actual conclusion section of your thesis, probably in second semester thesis too. Okay? So in the summary, you pull information in order to highlight important points and the main points. But in synthesis, you're pulling the information together to show conclusions and show the relationship between the information. It combines and contrasts information from different sources. So that's just, again, reiterating each paragraph should be discussing multiple sources. There are 1 or 2 professors on this campus who like to do the lit review more in the dissertation style, which means that instead of synthesizing, your emphasis is going to be on evaluating each of the scholarly sources you have chosen, looking at their methodology and that sort of thing. At this point, we're 7 weeks into a 14-week semester, you would definitely know by now if you're being asked to do an individual article-by-article evaluation or a traditional synthesis, okay? So if you're still feeling a little confused on that, definitely go speak to your professor and make sure you know what you're being asked to do. But as I said before, most of us on this campus are working towards the synthesis model. When you're writing your lit review, there's a couple different ways you can organize it. The most popular on this campus is by theme or by topic. And you identify these themes and topics, as we talked about a little bit in our workshop on how to read scholarly sources. You have to start taking notes when you're in annotations of things that are repeated, of questions that arise over and over again, of common themes, right? So that's the most preferable method that I've seen in use here. You can, however, do things chronologically. So for example, some of my visual and performing arts friends who are doing their thesis projects, they pick a specific artist or an artistic movement, and they trace chronologically either that artist's career or the development of that art form over the years. So in that sense, it makes a lot more sense to go chronologically. Okay? There's also the methodology option, and again, that's for my friends who are doing the one-at-a-time article evaluation method, where you actually have to dig into, is this a credible experiment that they did? Was their sample unbiased? All of that sort of thing. So most of you guys will be focusing on the theme by theme or topic by topic method. So some nuts and bolts here to kind of get us started when we're staring at that scary little blinking cursor on our otherwise blank white page. Your lit review is going to have an introduction and a conclusion, just like most essays we've written. Depending on your discipline, you might have a specific section, so like 4.1 for my business people might be the introduction, 4.4 might be the conclusion. If you're in a discipline that doesn't have everything structured out quite that tightly, you might have to do some organization of that a little bit more independently. So these are the things to make sure you have in your introduction. We need to identify the general topic and why it's important. We need to define the basic findings of the literature that's being reviewed. So present the major sides of the argument, the biggest principles. And finally, we explain the reason for completing the literature review. But again, it's hard to do that without putting in your own opinion, right? So you'll see as you read, because each of the scholarly articles you're working with has a mini lit review in that introductory section, okay? And you'll notice the kinds of phrasing that they use. Don't be afraid to borrow their sentence structure. You're going to get really tired of saying according to so-and-so and so-and-so states. Here are lots of other words that we can use, okay? As a result of this, so-and-so would argue the following things, right? Or conversely, these are all the words that are going to help you to show the relationship between the writers. And we do have handouts of this available in the Writing Center. If anybody needs them, they're actually being reordered right now, so swing by tomorrow and we should have more. And then in that same book that I mentioned earlier, They Say, I Say, they have lists just like this and even more elaborate ones, entire lists, and they're categorized by I'm trying to show that these two agree with each other, I'm trying to show that these two disagree with each other, I'm going to show that these two mostly agree with each other, so it's a super useful book for academic writing like this. Please, for the love of God, don't save citation to the end. Just don't do it. I've had students come into the Writing Center with their full 15 to 20 page lit review, and they say everything's done, I just have to put in the citation. And by that they don't mean they just have to make sure they have the right date and the page number, things in the right order. They literally meant that they didn't put any citation in. So then that person had to remember what article every single paraphrase came from in a stack of 20 articles. It was almost impossible. So even if you don't, develop some kind of shorthand for yourself, that's fine. Even if you don't write out the full correct citation the first time, just make a little note to yourself of the author's name or something that's going to get you back to that original. But honestly, if you start training yourself how to do the in-text citation as you go, you'll pick it up pretty quick. I have faith in all of you. You can do this. So come up with some kind of plan for keeping track of your citation as you write. Okay? And just like our introduction had some specific elements to include, the conclusion does as well. Again, you can write this at the end of the article. That's totally fine. So one of the things you should do is summarize the main argument of the research studies, right? So just kind of reiterating what that main topic was from the beginning. We're going to state areas where further research is needed, and then we're going to propose our own research. This is the part where you get your chance to add to the conversation. Okay. So you'll see too, read really closely the conclusion sections of the scholarly articles that you're using, because they all make these exact same moves. You can borrow from their phrasing. You'll figure out the best sentence structures that are going to clearly identify that this is what you're doing here. And it's kind of a funneling at this point. So at the end, you might have a list of 5 or 6 different areas of research that could potentially result from this current study. But you want to, again, build them into momentum. So start with the broadest thing that needs to be done and move down to the most focused and what you consider the most interesting. Because hopefully that thing that's the most focused and most interesting is what you're going to do with your research. So the effect is kind of like, oh, we really need to look into X, Y, and Z, but Z is particularly important. And it turns out that's what I'm going to do for you next semester. Okay? So it's kind of, the structure here is helping you be a persuasive researcher. I don't recommend even really thinking about revision until you have the entire first draft done. Because when you try to revise things before you get to the end, it's like trying to change your driving directions before you know where you're going. It's not very helpful and it's not very efficient. So when you do finish the whole draft and you do have time to sit down and revise it, always deal with the higher order concerns first, okay? So the ideas are clear. It meets the parameters of the assignment. You have the right kinds of sources in there. The language is professional. The order makes sense. Those are the things to take care of first. After all of that stuff is nice and tidy, then you move on to these lower order concerns, spelling, grammar, all of that stuff. And just to reiterate, because we can never get enough advertising, Writing Center can help you with all of these stages and everything in between. Even if you just need to know you have that hour to come in and sit down and write, you just need someone kind of looming over your shoulders saying, are you writing? I don't hear keys. Going. We can do that for you. And then even when it gets down to the nitty-gritty stuff like the APA citation style, we can help you with all of that as well. So please take full advantage of all of these resources that you have. So this is a little checklist we put together, the kinds of things that the lit review has to be able to do by the time you're finished with it, okay? So this is kind of after you finish the first draft, give it a read, make sure it does all of these things. It needs to demonstrate a thorough background knowledge of your topic, right, as we said before, comprehensive. Does it explore all sides so you don't appear to be biased? You have to acknowledge the other sides of the argument. Okay? It synthesizes material from multiple sources. We have all of our citations like that in each paragraph. And does it discuss the gaps in the research? So things that have not yet been covered, that should be covered in the near future, perhaps even by you. And then, of course, we need to lead into the new research question that's going to be presented by the thesis writer